Hello YouTubers, this is Gold Standard ZZ924 coming at you with another video. I'm going to be continuing with my SummerSlam Archival reviews, and the year I'll be reviewing for SummerSlam is from the year 2003. Um, Overall, I mean, this show just really wasn't all that great. There's basically about 7 matches on the card. It gets a lot of flack for a lot of reasons, and I'll explain in depth as the video progresses. Um, I mean, even looking at the matches on the card, it just doesn't really scream, you know, it just doesn't scream like big time event. You see some of these matches, and it seems like something that you would see either on Raw or SmackDown, or maybe on some small pay-per-view like Backlash or Bad Blood. Any small pay-per-view venue that isn't part of WWE's Big Four. And since SummerSlam is one of their biggest pay-per-views, you would think that they would have like a stacked card. And unlike some of the previous SummerSlams before this pay-per-view, you had SummerSlam 2000, which had like about 10 matches on the card. You had like the TLC matches. You had the 2 out of 3 falls with Benoit, Jericho, and the TLC I mentioned with the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian. And in 2001, you have Rock versus Booker T, Austin versus Angle. Um, you know, you even had the ladder match, but I mean, and then you get to like 2002, which was the SummerSlam I reviewed a couple videos ago. It was despite 7-8 matches on the card, they had a pretty loaded roster, and they managed to utilize some of their top guys at the time, and to kind of juxtapose it in with some of the undercard. And then you get to like 2003, it's like it just really feels like a step down. And I mean, I guess I could understand why some people criticize this pay-per-view. Um, Now, personally, I was at a family trip overseas, so I didn't get to watch this pay-per-view when it first aired. So it's been taking me a long time to actually get me an opportunity to watch this pay-per-view, because I just didn't have that motivation until recently. So I mean, just kind of rewatching it, it's pretty pretty mediocre for a big time pay-per-view. Is it the worst pay-per-view I've seen? Not really, but just a pay-per-view that could have been so much better. Not just not just matches, like match quality wise, but more like how the card is, how some of these matches are booked, and as well as the overall card going into this pay-per-view. So without further ado, let's get started. We have the opening contest, which is for the World Tag Team titles. You have the champions La Resistance taking on the Dudley Boyz. This is basically your TV style match. Just a very solid opener. You see La Resistance doing their double team spine buster. The Dudley Boyz doing their regular signature double team moves like the What's Up. Where Devon would, go for the headbutt, and, Bubba Ray's, like, holding his opponent's legs. Just a couple double team moves back and forth. Some hot, just some, a couple tag-ins here and there. Just a normal paced match. Nothing too drawn out or anything. You know, And then, basically the match ended when Rob Conway came in, and he disguised himself as a cameraman, and he whacked one of the Dudleys with the camera. So basically, La Resistance managed to retain the tag team titles. I mean, this match, it was just just an average match. Some people kind of shit on it, but I don't really understand why. But it's not necessarily spectacular either. But just just your average match, like I said, but just nothing really too memorable. So I mean, it was just a very solid match, about 2.5 stars. And then we get to the next match on the card, which was the Undertaker taking on A Train. Just another match that just, unlike the first match, which was basically average, but nothing too terrible. This match, on the other hand, I just can't really give it a pass. Just these two guys, they just didn't really have that chemistry to work on a good match, if not great. But maybe good match is probably what they could have done best, but that didn't happen. That just didn't deliver for me. Just the build up going in this pay per view. A Train like interfered in some Undertaker's matches. Most notably his on SmackDown he had a rematch against John Cena, which was a rematch from Vengeance, which the Undertaker won. But they had the rematch on SmackDown, and then A Train interfered, and he was working on the injured rib of the Undertaker, and then John Cena managed to beat the Undertaker with the FU, or as we now know as the Attitude Adjustment. And then A Train was siding with Sable, who was her bodyguard at the time, and Sable and Stephanie were having some conflicts going on, and then Undertaker kind of gets thrown in the mix, just trying to help, just saving Stephanie, and then A Train kept attacking Undertaker here and there, just ambushing him. So that's basically how the feud unfolds. And Undertaker, A Train have a match at SummerSlam. Nothing really too memorable like the first, just like the opening match here. Just A Train, doing, just doing his signature move, with I think he called it the derailer, where he like chokes his opponents with his two bare hands and he just slams it down. So I mean, he did that move, but Undertaker kicked out. Surprisingly enough, Undertaker actually beat A Train with the choke slam, which is pretty rare at the time. Undertaker would always like use that as a signature move to set up for either the Last Ride or the Tombstone Piledriver. But yeah, it just kind of felt like A Train was gonna kick out, but he didn't. And then Sable accompanied A Train, and after the match, Sable tried to seduce the Undertaker, but then Undertaker looked like he was gonna choke slam Sable, but then out comes Stephanie McMahon, and Stephanie and Sable had a little cat fight going on. And that was really Undertaker versus A Train. Just not a really good match. About 2 stars. A Train, we all know him now as Lord Tensai or Sweet Tea, as one half of the Tons of Funk, with Brothers Clay. I mean, I haven't really seen any of his stuff in Japan because I've heard some really good stuff about his work there. He wrestled as, he's been wrestling under many personas. Before he was A Train, he was Prince Albert, or just simply known as Albert. And then, he became A Train, and then, after he got released, he wrestled in Japan as Giant Bernard, and then he went back to WWE as, Lord Tensai or Sweet Tea. But, like I said, I haven't really seen any of his Japanese stuff, but I heard they were pretty good, but I haven't really checked it out for myself, so I'm not really sure if, he's improved since his first WWE run. I mean, this match, just wasn't really a good match, like I said, just 2 stars. Probably one of Undertaker's worst matches on SummerSlam. So that's basically, there you have it, that. And then you have the third match on the card, which was Shane McMahon versus Eric Bischoff. Originally, this was supposed to be just your regular one-on-one match, but then Eric Bischoff, since he was the Raw General Manager at the time, he books himself in a match with Shane within a Falls Count Anywhere match. And then, in the beginning, Coach comes out, no one knows why he came out, and then suddenly, he whacks Shane McMahon with a weapon, and this pretty much signified Coach's heel turn. They kind of foreshadowed it after when he was conducting an interview for the Dudley Boyz. After they came up short against La Resistance, and going in the third match, Coach showcases true colors, and you would think it would at least be a decent to good match, but being Eric Bischoff, being in charge of the Raw brand at the time, he cut off JR and King off the announcer's booth, or at least cut them off of the mic, excuse me. And then Coach and Bischoff were just basically beating the crap out of Shane, and Coach was basically mocking JR and just doing his just saying all of his usual quotes like, "Wow, that's a slobber knocker." I know it's less enthusiasm when I do it, but so basically they were bullying Shane McMahon, with Coach being on the mic. It was pretty annoying for the most part, I say. It was, I get that they were heels at the time, but it was just freaking annoying. It's like, I can't stand it. And then eventually Shane fights back, and then Stone Cold comes out later on, and then pretty much evens the odds. Austin gave Bischoff a stunner. Shane went for the cover, but he pulled Bischoff at near fall, so he just before the ref counted the 3, Shane McMahon was just playing, just toying around with Eric Bischoff. And then the match ended when Shane McMahon, he set Bischoff on the announce table, and he utilized he did that top rope elbow drop through on Bischoff through the announce table to pick up the victory. So Shane McMahon versus Eric Bischoff, not really good match in my opinion. Some people might disagree, but just something that was pretty much unnecessary, at least for SummerSlam. If they wanted to do this, they would have done this on Raw. Granted, they didn't do well on Raw, but I just didn't really see the point in doing it a second time. But personally for me, they should have just replaced it with the Intercontinental title defense, since Christian was the champion, and he didn't really he wasn't injured at the time, so he could have just defended the belt at this pay-per-view instead, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So McMahon versus Bischoff, just it was just much of a just very not a really good match, basically what I'm saying. So about a 1/4 star, 1 star and a quarter. Just one of my least favorite matches. And then we get to the 4th match on the card. We have the Fatal 4-Way match for the United States title. You have the champion Eddie Guerrero going in, taking on Chris Benoit, Rhyno, and Tajiri. This was actually a really fun match. Doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but this one was probably one of the very few enjoyable matches on the card. You would think with all these 4 guys on SmackDown, you would think they would at least put a really good match, and quite frankly they did. Just a really good balanced mix of some pretty fast-paced action. You have Tajiri being the high flyer, Rhyno being the powerhouse, and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit being just part high flying, part technical wrestlers. So it kind of all balances out and tries to just really showcases their different styles of wrestling, basically. Nice Hurricane Rana with Eddie Guerrero. Tajiri doing the handspring elbow that he normally does, and the tarantula. I kind of missed that move. There was a notable moment where Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit were locking in submissions on Rhyno and Tajiri at the same time. Eddie Guerrero had the lasso from El Paso, and Chris Benoit had the crossface locked in. So I thought it was a pretty cool moment, because you never know that who's gonna tap out first, because Fatal 4-Way matches were 1 fall a piece, so it's not like a 2 out of 3 falls or anything like that. But like I said, some really good fast-paced action here. Benoit and Tajiri, clothesline over over the ropes and the ringside. And, basically the match ended when Eddie Guerrero frog splashed on Rhyno to retain the United States title. So, I mean, this is a really enjoyable match. Doesn't get talked about a lot, but this is probably one of the few saving graces of this from this pay-per-view. About 3.5 stars, And then we get to the next match on the card, which is for the WWE Championship. You have the champion Kurt Angle taking on Brock Lesnar. This is basically a rematch from WrestleMania 19, and I kind of prefer their 19 match personally. Not that I'm saying their SummerSlam match was bad. I mean, it was still just as good. But, I don't know. I mean, you had, Vince McMahon interfering in the match, whereas WrestleMania 19, it was just a straight up wrestling. You didn't have any interferences or any shenanigans. I mean, except for that, one botch moment where, like, Brock Lesnar did, like, a shooting star press, and it accidentally landed on Angle's neck. So, just a really, I mean, aside from that, it was still a pretty good match. We all know the story. Kurt Angle had to take time off due to an injury, and then Angle came back, won back his WWE title at Vengeance, and Brock Lesnar invokes his rematch. And it looked like it was going to be a babyface versus babyface match until one SmackDown. There was supposed to be a steel cage match between Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon, and Kurt Angle was going to be the guest referee. And then prior to the match, Brock Lesnar was allegedly knocked out, but still, Brock Lesnar kept fighting on, and then it turned out to be a ruse when Brock Lesnar kicked up and then nailed a F5 on Kurt Angle, and and then just basically Lesnar and Vince just swerved the crowd there, because Lesnar wasn't really hurt, but they were actually in the conspiracy all along, So basically now the roles are reversed. Kurt Angle's the babyface, Brock Lesnar's the heel, and this is really how it all culminates here. Angle Lesnar, still a pretty good match. You got to see some really cool, just some usual rest holds and some amateur wrestling takedowns. There was a really cool moment where like Kurt Angle looked like he was going for like a triangle chokehold, but then like Brock Lesnar was, just looking like he was gonna pass out. And I think Brock Lesnar also did like it almost looked like he was doing that muscle buster finishing move that Samoa Joe does, or something that almost reminded me of it. And then Kurt Angle doing some in-ring psychology, working on Brock Lesnar's leg. And then, Brock Lesnar fights it off, but then like Kurt Angle accidentally bumped into the ref, so he was knocked out. And then, Vince McMahon, comes in, damn it. Vince McMahon was, interfering in the match. He has a steel chair, he whacks it on Kurt Angle, when Angle was doing the ankle lock. And then, eventually, Brock Lesnar tried to do the F5, which succeeds. And, it looked like it was going to win, but, Angle kicks out. And then, basically, Brock Lesnar tried to go for another F5, but then, like, Angle countered into a ankle lock. And then, Brock Lesnar tapped out. So basically, Kurt Angle retained the WWE title. And then, Angle and McMahon had a little confrontation for a moment, and then Kurt Angle Angle slams Vince through the steel chair and basically celebrates. So Angle versus Lesnar, still a good match, not as great as their 19 match, but still just as good. About 3.25 stars. And then we get to the next match on the card. We have is Kane and RVD in a no holds barred match. This was actually a pretty short match, given the gimmick match. But, it was an alright match. Nothing too spectacular. Kane had to unmask himself. There was like one episode on Raw in 2003 He lost that match against Triple H, where the stipulation was that if Kane didn't win the WWE title, then he had to unmask himself. And so he does, and Kane lost the match to Triple H, so he retained the belt. But Kane lost the match, and then he had to unmask himself to the entire crowd. And Kane and RVD, they were former tag team champions. They lost the belt to La Resistance. And then Kane started going on a rampage, and just beating the crap out of a lot of the wrestlers that were in his path. Especially most notably RVD. And this is really how the build up goes. But Kane RVD, there were some good spots here. RVD doing that moonsault off the barricade to Kane. So basically RVD was kind of like the MVP of this match. RVD utilizing the chair on Kane and doing the Van Terminator. And that's basically where RVD tosses his opponent with a steel chair, and while his opponent's holding it, RVD does like a spin kick. So it kind of collides with the chair and smacks it right on his opponent. And there was also another spot where RVD tried to go for he was holding a steel chair, but looks like he was going to go for that coast to coast move that Shane McMahon does. And but then the camera kind of there was like a little poor camera choreography because we weren't really sure if RVD actually connected that drop kick to Kane successfully, because Kane kind of moved out of the way, and then the match ended when Kane did the tombstone piledriver on RVD on the steel steps, and then basically he rolled back, he rolled RVD back in the ring to get the 3 count. So basically Kane won the match. Just a very short match. It was alright, but about 2.5 stars. Personally they should have just done Kane versus Shane at SummerSlam instead of Unforgiven, when they had that last man standing match. But Kane tombstone Linda McMahon on the steel steps, and Shane should have just got his revenge, or at least avenge his mother after getting seriously hurt. So they should have probably done Kane versus Shane right out of the gate there. But I guess I can understand why they did Kane and RVD, since they were former tag champs. But I don't know. But they could have just structured just put certain matches on there, or at least replace it with something that's better. So, but Kane RVD was an alright match, but I think it gets kind of forgotten because it was sandwiched in between the 2 world title matches, and especially the Elimination Chamber, which I'll be reviewing up next. So the main event of SummerSlam was the Elimination Chamber match for the world title, and you have the champion going in, Triple H, taking on Shawn Michaels, Goldberg, Kevin Nash, Chris Jericho, and his Evolution buddy Randy Orton. This overall, this chamber match, just wasn't really as great as the first one at Survivor Series. You had about 3 guys who competed in the first Elimination Chamber, and they pretty much were involved in the second one. Which is this pay-per-view here, and just I don't know, there wasn't really any big spots. I guess that might be why this Elimination Chamber kind of gets just not as good as the first one, but the match started off pretty fine as usual. Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho, given that these guys were also one of those people that were in the first Elimination Chamber. So they went at it for a little bit, and then, eventually, Kevin Nash and Randy Orton came in later. So basically Goldberg and Triple H were the remaining 2 guys that were still in the hatch. So, but then, there was Kevin Nash was the first guy to get eliminated. Shawn Michaels, Sweet Chin Music, Kevin Nash, and then Chris Jericho went for a roll up. So basically Nash was the first guy eliminated. And since Nash, this was his last WWE appearance, you know, um, Kevin Nash just basically went on a rampage, jackknife power bombing, all the, pretty much the competitors that were in there at the time. Um, and then, like I said, this was Nash's last appearance, so, he went to TNA for a couple years, and then, he came back to the WWE in 2011. Um, so, I mean, this was pretty much, the last time you'll see him in a while. So, Nash was the first guy out, and and then Goldberg, actually before Goldberg, Triple H was the fifth guy coming out, and just before he could, Shawn Michaels, Sweet Chin Music's Triple H, so it kind of knocked him out for pretty much most of the match. Um, and then there was like, Goldberg eventually came out of the hatch, crowd was chanting his name even before he came out. So he basically went, just pretty much tore the house down and, spearing everyone. And there was a notable spot where Goldberg did a spear on Chris Jericho through the glass hatch. So he was pretty much busted right open, Jericho. And then, basically Goldberg eliminates Randy Orton with the spear. And then Goldberg also went on to eliminate Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels. So it's pretty much down to him and Triple H. They went at it for about a couple minutes, and then there was actually another case of a really poor camera choreography when Triple H grabbed a sledgehammer, in which we never really saw how Triple H managed to get the sledgehammer inside the chamber. I mean, I think Ric Flair kind of slid this sledgehammer, but they never showed it, and it just looked like something that came out of nowhere. So like Triple H pretty much whacked Goldberg with the sledgehammer and basically got the 3 count. So Triple H retained the world title, and then Triple H and Evolution come out, and they beat the crap out of Goldberg, and then they handcuffed him through the fence, or at least the steel structure of the Elimination Chamber. So that's really how the pay-per-view ends. The Elimination Chamber, just wasn't really as good. For its time, it was actually considered one of the worst Elimination Chambers until I think around New Year's Revolution '06, and then I think it was either, for its time, like I said, but but a lot of people argue that New Year's Revolution '06 as well as December to Dismember '06 was considered one of the worst Elimination Chamber matches. But this one was really underwhelming, I could say, because the match was still going fine, but it was just really, really rushed. And Triple H, barely doing anything at all, and then basically, Goldberg was tearing the house down, and Triple H was getting his ass beat so many times, and then it takes one sledgehammer to knock out Goldberg to get a 3 count, which is not only anticlimactic but really unrealistic, especially when you're telling like a story in the ring. But I don't know if this is another case of Triple H ego stroking. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with that, or the fact that he was having this sort of habit of just burying a lot of the WCW guys, which was pretty much what he was doing that year, even if it was very subtle. But I don't know. This Elimination Chamber match, it was just pretty good, but it was really, really rushed in the end. So I'm probably going to give it about 3 stars. Just a very disappointing Elimination Chamber, but it was still fine, like I said, but just a little disappointing. But overall, this show, pay-per-view score overall, I'll give it is probably a 6 out of 10. I don't know. The card, the undercard especially, gets really forgotten. And the Elimination Chamber match, which was given all the hype, didn't really live up to the expectations. And personally, even if it's me coming off bias, but Goldberg should have won this. I mean, this is at your big pay-per-view, and Goldberg was, starting off pretty hot on fire, and then it all came crashing down when, Triple H just whacked him with a sledgehammer and just basically beat him clean to retain this world title. Granted, Goldberg ended up winning the title from Triple H at Unforgiven, but, by that time, not many people cared. So, I mean, Goldberg's run in WWE was just really disappointing, especially in retrospect. So, Elimination Chamber gets 3 stars, and the pay-per-view score overall, give it is probably a 6 out of 10. Just a pretty disappointing SummerSlam. But that's really it for this video. What did you like about the pay-per-view? What did you not like about it? So that's really it for my SummerSlam 2003 review. So till next time, this is Gold Standard 0924 signing out.